Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at, in my opinion, a serious problem in the modern MMO space. And it very particularly has to do with the whole MMO part of the genre. Thank you very much to the Patreon people. Let's go take a look. Well, in my opinion, one of the big problems that the modern MMO space has is that you spend the first like 50 levels, or whatever the game is, right? You spend that entire initial process pretty much being directly encouraged to skip like the community and grouping up aspect of an MMO, right? Because the new MMO way is super easy single player quests that can just be done one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. And actually trying to group up with someone would like slow you down and make everything less efficient, right? You would take way longer to get through to the process, and the game, when you get there, it completely changes. You get there, and now all of a sudden you need groups, right? You need groups and you need community and people to get stuff done with, or maybe not really, right? You could always just hit the matchmaking button. And I think this is what ends up happening a lot of times. And like, obviously this video will end up full of comments from people who don't do the thinking of other people's perspective and other people's experience, and they only understand theirs, and they'll be like, well, I came in with a whole guild full of people, I don't know what you're talking about, right? Or I play with my wife and my best friends and, all this stuff. But like, there's a whole bunch of people out there that don't have that. When I think back to games like the first one I played, EverQuest, right? The first MMO, these games were truly like a social MMO experience from the get-go. By the time you had gotten just a couple levels in your little starting port area or whatever, and you tried to go out into the real world, you very quickly were met with challenges, obstacles, and death penalties that were strong enough to immediately make you seek out guilds, friends, community, and people that you could kind of like rely on to always group up with and be doing stuff, getting stuff done. And I feel like I want to show you a little clip. There's this channel, his name is Iron Blaze. He makes content on EverQuest still. No, I'm not going back and like playing. I actually might dive in and do a little bit, but I'm not suggesting anyone go pick that up as their serious MMO, right? Like, the combat's so outdated. It's all really, just old and outdated, and no one's probably really going to love it unless they have the nostalgia of playing it before. But I want you to see the point he makes about the social MMO.
Reason 2. EverQuest is a true social MMO. The whole selling point of this genre is the social nature of it. Working together with your friends and competing against others. It can be some of the most fun you will ever have playing a video game. And unfortunately, many modern MMOs seem to have forgotten their roots. I might take flack for this, but I feel that many modern MMOs are really nothing more than glorified single-player games. They have social aspects tacked on as a second thought, not as a primary concern.
So, right there, that's a big issue that I'm currently having in the game, is it feels like, right, I really love the game, but it also feels like a single-player game almost the entire time. And then, like I said, most people seem to just be matchmaking this stuff, right? I'm always in the guild chat like, yo, I don't like soloing or pugging these guardians, right? But like, I think part of the problem is also that hindsight, I believe the tier 3 release was a massive mistake. I'm sure all the hardcore players will disagree, but coming from a guild that is full of normal people, we've got like 1 or 2 people in tier 3. We've got a few people spread out across the different gear scores of tier 2. We've got some people in tier 1. We have people that aren't even tier 1 yet. And what does this mean? This means it's kind of hard to play together.
And I like single-player games too, but
Me too.
What's the point of playing an MMO if it's 80% single-player?
Yeah, I'll be honest. Elden Ring just launched. I'm watching people play Elden Ring. I'm having my experience of feeling mostly single player, and then every once in a while hindered by not having a solid group of people because, right, the game hasn't like encouraged any of us to really form a solid group to like get through content together on a daily basis. And so I'm getting this feeling of like, man, I actually, I wasn't so poor because my channel was doing bad. I'd pick up Elden Ring and I'd probably be playing that quite a bit right now and giving a little break, wait for more people to catch up to where I am. I don't give a shit about getting to tier 3. I don't give a shit about like Man, like the last group of people that I was playing with, I was technically carrying, right? I was doing 50% of the damage in a 4-man party, but I didn't care. I was having way more fun than soloing or pugging because I was in comms with people that I like talking to. But it doesn't happen often enough. It does not happen often enough. Part of it, I'm sure, is my fault. I get to play during the day, and when nighttime comes around, I'd like to be winding down. I don't want to be doing intense raids at 10 p.m. at night and then trying to go bed at midnight. You don't get good sleep like that, factually.
It's kind of a waste of design. And the real fun is with the other players, not the bots and endless quest lines. This modern design philosophy, players are a lot less interreliant than they used to be. They don't work together as much. Interaction is much more rare, and that's oftentimes what makes these worlds feel so alive.
Right? Unless you're talking like you're showing up at these like events that are timed, right? And it's technically like other people are there, but you literally don't have to talk to each other ever at all. Same thing even goes for abyssals, man. People study abyssal dungeons, they matchmake, and no words are spoken the entire time. I hate that experience.
Most, if not 80% of your experience is just going to be solo, and this is really missing the point of MMOs. MMOs were not meant to be single player.
Thank you.
They were not meant to highlight the game itself per se. MMOs were meant to highlight the interactions you have with others, the stories that you make with your friends. The game is just the window dressing for the story.
I still have EverQuest 1 and 2 and Arcade stories. Like these older MMOs, I have memories that are as strong in my mind as my first kiss or my first time that I, lost my virginity. And like these massive life, I have video game memories in games like that are that huge. I don't in any newer MMO that doesn't have this like harshness that encourages from the beginning grouping up and forming those relationships in the game.
You make with others, the drama, the successes, the failure you share with others is the real content of MMOs. That is what makes this genre so special. EverQuest design leaned into this. Mobs were difficult, if not impossible, to defeat alone. Your class could not do it all. Even if you could solo, it would still be 5 times slower and much riskier than to get help from others.
Riskier.
So how else did EverQuest encourage interaction? 1, in early expansions, there was no universal fast travel. Distances were very long. Going to another area could take hours.
Better have a druid or wizard friend.
Dangerous. EverQuest was notorious for having random higher level mobs roam through low level zones. So you'd be going through and just get smoked from a random path out of nowhere, and then you have to start your journey all over again. So you had 2 choices. You could either risk running it for a long time, or get a quick teleport
probably
to
die.
a different area that only 2 out of the 14 classes.
Probably die a very serious death and have to go back to wherever you started from and run all the way back and get your body if you wanted to keep your items, and you lost experience and you needed one of a few select classes that could revive with experience back. There was all this interconnected like dependability on each other that forced social interaction, and nowadays I can just hear gamers saying that sounds awful, that sounds like cancer, but that's what MMO was. That's what it was.
Had. And if you wanted that port, you had to go talk to a person, and you had to generally tip them for that service. Let's say you ran the distance. Only 4 out of the 14 classes had a run speed buff early on. It could shave off 30 minutes or more of travel time. So you could run the slow way, or you could talk to one of those run speed buff classes and give them a tip for a speed boost. Number 2, item marketplace. There was no automated marketplace for high value items.
Yep.
If you wanted to sell an item or buy an item, you had to go to a trader zone, a zone where a huge bunch of people congregated to shout out their wares. And if you wanted an item, you had to go talk to that person and negotiate. If you wanted to sell an item, you had to talk to that person as well. There was negotiation and actual economy.
That now that all the convenience has been added to games, people will hear this and think it sounds so terrible. But what it creates, it's It's almost like certain levels of what would now be considered bad design are good in MMOs because they encourage social interaction, the entire point of the MMO.
Number 3, corpse recovery and reses.
This was a real
Death
one.
was painful in EverQuest. You would lose a lot of experience that could have taken 30 minutes to over an hour plus to acquire. It got worse the higher level you got. Your gear and items would also stay on the corpse. They could rot and be permanently deleted if you did not get back in time. You would have to make the long trek back to recover your corpse, exactly in the dangerous spot it was left in too. And 3 classes, they had resurrection spells. They could revive your corpse and give you some experience back so you didn't lose out on all that time. It could even bring you all the way back so you won't have to make that run, but you had to talk to someone to get that resurrection. You also generally had to tip that person.
Yeah, to actually communicate with a human.
Groups. So soloing slow or outright impossible for some classes. Experience gain was generally quicker and much safer in groups. There was no group finder window. You had to actually reach out and talk to people in the area to create a group. The classes you picked mattered. Your group wouldn't work.
Yeah, I gotta say, I think that matchmaking and group finders are overall a terrible thing for MMOs. Because, again, MMO, and it only helps to lower the social interaction and need to talk to other people. Like, there's nothing less enjoyable to me than matchmaking or party finding a group in a game and going in and clearing the thing and no one says anything until the very end except maybe GG and then they hit leave. I hate it.
Work well if you didn't have a healer or a tank, generally speaking. And who you picked mattered also. Some people were just flat out bad players. Others were surgical. You would remember who was good and who was bad. Reputations existed on these servers. And it would help you decide who you wanted to team up with again or not.
And not so much anymore now, right? Because you just matchmake. You don't even matchmake with people from your own server. There is zero identity and reputation or anything like that at all. And if anything, it creates this thing where, like, there's a lot more toxicity, right? There's screenshots everywhere of people trying to do matchmaking and they just get the most toxic person ever who's screaming at them to skip all the fucking cutscenes, right? Or they're screaming at them that they're trash. Or maybe there's one death and they just leave, so everyone has to start it all over again. It's not a good experience.
5, crowd control. So like I mentioned before, individual mobs are already tough. What happens if you get too many? Crowd control class can handle the extra mobs, but that's not enough alone. If a mob is locked down but it gets hit wrongly, that mez will break. That mob will become active again and will start damaging the group. And it's really important.
This is a big thing lost in pretty much all the modern games too, right? Now we just like mow down 100 things at once. Like, you know, you get a couple ads during the boss and you're like, okay, whatever, I just spin and I'll accidentally kill them with my, side AoE damage while I continue to focus the boss or whatever.
There's coordination, and the DPS and the tank are on the same page so they're not hitting the wrong thing. And that takes communication.
Oh shit,
and lastly, 6, raid
again.
coordination. Fuck. Some raids have special mechanics, require special healing, different techniques, tanks, pullers, healers, crowd control.
This one now, like they all have, right? The difference now is everyone expects you to just watch a YouTube video and then silently go through the raid and do everything perfectly. No communication.
DPS, support, they all need to be on the same page because a single mistake in some of these raids can end the fight for everyone. EverQuest, in many of its original designs, it was unforgiving. But in that difficulty, it fostered communication and player cohesion, unlike in many modern MMOs now. Reputation mattered, how you acted on the server, how good you play your class. Anything rude you did, people remembered. And you could be a star on that server, a top player for the class, someone people would go to first for grouping. Or you could be ostracized for bad behavior. People would avoid you, decline you for groups, or not even trade with you.
There you go, guys. Kind of a look, my opinion, at a big issue in almost every single modern MMO across the board. Is obviously not a shot at Last Ark. Out of all of them, right, it is by far my favorite. It's the only one I'm sinking hours into, and I already have over 200 hours in the game. I really do like it. But every day when it comes time for Guardian raids and there's not a group of people like for me to go do them with that I know and I like doing them with, and I know my choice is that anti-social matchmaking experience where I'm probably going to have to carry anyway, or soloing, I go solo. I've soloed every Guardian up through the level 4, lava turtle dude. I did him last night. I've only got one left that I'm high enough gear score to attempt to do. I'll probably end up soloing him today. And, that's just kind of the experience for me. I really fucking hate that anti-social matchmaking experience. I do. I will not engage with it. And if it comes to the point where I can't continue to solo them and I still haven't found that solid group of people, that will probably be the point where I maybe just stop taking the game that serious anymore. And I'll enjoy the probably 500 or so hours I've gotten out of it for my money by then. And we'll see how it goes. I'd be really curious to hear, some of the viewers' opinions. Do you guys agree, disagree about this kind of overall issue in the MMO genre? If there's even people that watch these that, played the older MMOs and got to see how things were before things like party finders and matchmakers and what that did to the social experience of the game, or experience a game with actual difficult content from from level 4 on, you need a group or your time is going to be really rough. You need those other players that play those other classes to help you do and achieve things, because you can't do it all, and almost everything in the game, right, is balanced around expecting a group of people to tackle it, or you'd be over there soloing one thing and losing so many resources doing it that you're gonna have to sit there and rest a while before you can even try again because you just got beat up trying to solo. I'd really be curious to hear other people's opinion. Maybe this is just a me thing, and the problem was with me. Thank you very much to the Patreon people. I really appreciate you guys. If you enjoy the content, maybe like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you next time.